Garrick Holt never imagined his life would amount to anything more than cleaning up after smugglers, bounty hunters, and drunken space traders. Working as a janitor on Outpost Epsilon 7, a decaying refueling station on the edge of the Zentaur expanse, he spent his days scrubbing plasma burns off bulkheads, unclogging filtration ducts, and disposing of the occasional alien corpse left behind after a bar brawl. The station's administrators barely paid him, but it was better than being stuck on Earth, where the corporate overlords dictated every aspect of life. At least here, on the fringes of known space, he could dream. That's all it ever was, though, dreaming. Garrick would lean against the station's grimy observation windows, watching the sleek silver hulls of trader ships and bounty hunter crafts soar past, imagining himself in the pilot's seat. He'd picture himself carving through asteroid fields, diving between planetary rings, and skimming the surfaces of neon-lit worlds in the dead of night. But dreams didn't pay the bills. His reality was a leaking mop bucket, recycled oxygen that always smelled faintly of rust, and the constant hum of malfunctioning station systems. He lived in a closet-sized room with flickering lights, listening to the distant rumble of ship engines coming and going. No one respected a janitor. The pilots ignored him, the mercenaries shoved him aside, and the station's overseers barely remembered his name. Then the Revenant arrived. It drifted into the sector like a ghost, a massive alien warship of unknown origin. Battered, scorched, and riddled with holes, it looked abandoned. The outpost scanners detected no life signs, no distress signals. It was just there. Some thought it was a derelict, others thought it was a trap. The whole station was abuzz with speculation. Some of the traders wanted to board it, but they were afraid of whatever had left it in that state. The mercenaries weren't willing to risk their lives for something that might not be salvageable. The station authorities sent out a preliminary probe, but the moment it got within 100 meters, the thing simply shut down. Like something had killed its electronics instantly. That was enough to keep most people away. But Garrick? He saw an opportunity. It started as a dumb idea, just a flicker of a thought while he was cleaning the station's docking bay. What if he went aboard, just for a look? No one else was trying, and if it was really abandoned, maybe there was something valuable inside. He wasn't a pirate, but if he could find something worth selling, he might be able to finally get off this station, buy himself a second-hand freighter, and leave Epsilon 7 behind. The problem was, he didn't have clearance to leave the station, much less board an unknown alien vessel. Security was tight. The station overseers didn't want scavengers looting whatever was inside. But Garrick had spent years slipping through places he wasn't supposed to be. Janitors were invisible, after all. No one noticed when he slipped into restricted zones. No one batted an eye when he borrowed a set of technician credentials off a drunk engineer at the bar. He requisitioned a small repair shuttle under the guise of maintenance inspections. No one questioned it. No one ever questioned the janitor. Flying toward the Revenant was unsettling. The closer he got, the more he realized how enormous the warship was. It dwarfed Epsilon 7, its dark hull stretching for what seemed like kilometers. It was scarred from battle, deep gouges in its plating revealing layers of alien metal. There were no lights, no visible signs of activity, yet something about it felt aware. Docking was easier than expected. The Revenant had an open hangar bay, its atmospheric shielding still active despite its derelict appearance. That should have been Garrick's first warning that the ship wasn't entirely dead, but he ignored the sinking feeling in his gut and piloted the shuttle inside. The moment he stepped off, his breath hitched. The ship's interior was eerie, vast, empty, yet somehow waiting. Strange glowing symbols adorned the walls, shifting as if they were alive. The architecture was a blend of organic and mechanical, pulsing with dormant power. The air was thin but breathable, though it smelled strange, like metal and ozone. He moved cautiously, stepping over what looked like the remains of the former crew, skeletal insectoid beings long since dead. They were sprawled across the corridors, some clutching weapons, others slumped against walls, their armor cracked and scorched. It was clear there had been a battle here, and the Revenant had not escaped unscathed. As he walked deeper into the ship, his nerves frayed. The silence was oppressive. Every step echoed through the cavernous halls. He was beginning to think this was a mistake when he stumbled into what looked like the bridge. It was massive, an expansive chamber filled with dark consoles and holographic interfaces. A massive viewport stretched across the front, giving a breathtaking view of the stars. At the center of the room was a raised platform with an ominous-looking command chair. Garrick hesitated, then stepped toward the central console. His fingers hovered over the strange alien symbols. A part of him screamed that this was a terrible idea, but another part, the part that had spent years trapped in a dead-end job, the part that had dreamed of flying among the stars, refused to back down. Positively, the ground slowly rose around him as he lifted his legs. The part that had spent years trapped in a dead-end job, the part that had... He pressed his hand against the console. A surge of energy pulsed beneath his fingertips. The symbols glowed brighter, shifting rapidly, rearranging themselves into something he could understand. A deep synthetic voice filled the chamber, smooth yet commanding. Designation: Revenant. Primary systems compromised, awaiting command input. Garrick's breath hitched. Command input. Confirm new command authority. His heart pounded. This was insane. This was beyond anything he had ever experienced. Yet something inside him urged him forward. He had come this far. He had nothing to lose. With a deep breath, he made the most reckless decision of his life. Garrick Holt, confirming command authority? For a moment, nothing happened. Then, new command authority registered, Captain Garrick Holt. Every console flickered to life. The ship groaned as long-dormant systems powered up, the hum beneath his feet growing stronger. Thrusters ignited, weapon systems came online. The Revenant was awakening. Garrick barely had time to process what was happening when a proximity alarm blared through the ship. The main screen flared to life, displaying incoming vessels. Sleek, spiked warships marked with a crimson insignia. The Krell Dominion. A transmission came through. The screen crackled, then cleared to reveal a reptilian face with cold, predatory eyes. Attention, unknown vessel. This is High Warlord Zartok of the Krell Dominion. That ship does not belong to you. Garrick swallowed hard. The Krell Dominion was one of the most feared warlord factions in the galaxy. If they wanted this ship, it had to be valuable. He took a shaky breath and activated the comms. I found it first. Zartok's eyes narrowed. Surrender the Revenant or be destroyed. As if in response, the ship's HUD displayed multiple inbound vessels locking onto him. He was outnumbered, outgunned, and had no idea how to fly this thing. But then, the ship spoke again. Enemy threats detected, engaging defense protocols. Weapons systems primed, shields activated. The ship was responding to him. Garrick cracked a nervous grin. Well then, he muttered, gripping the controls. Let's see what this baby can do. With a roar of thrusters, the Revenant surged into battle. Garrick's hands tightened around the unfamiliar controls as the Revenant surged forward. The ship responded with a smooth, almost predatory grace, moving through the void like it was alive. The incoming Krell warships loomed on the display, 6 in total, sleek, dagger-shaped vessels, armed to the teeth with plasma lances and disruptor cannons. The Revenant's own weapons systems were still unfamiliar to him, but the ship seemed to anticipate his thoughts, bringing targeting systems online, highlighting enemy weak points in red. The comm crackled again. Final warning, human. Power down the ship or we will rip you from its husk. Zartok's voice dripped with contempt. Garrick's mouth went dry. He had no idea what he was doing. He had never fired a ship's weapons in his life, much less fought against a fleet of trained killers. And yet, as his hands moved over the controls, the ship seemed to guide him, reacting to his instincts. "Ship," he said hesitantly. "Are we armed?" "Primary weapons online, plasma cannons at 62% operational capacity. Missile bays locked, energy lance charged." 62% wasn't great, but it was better than nothing. Garrick had no idea what an energy lance was, but it sounded dangerous. He swallowed hard as the Krell ships fanned out, their formation tightening, preparing to encircle him. "Okay, let's try not to die," he muttered. The Krell struck first. A barrage of red-hot plasma fire streaked through the black, slamming into the Revenant's shields. The ship shuddered, alarms flashing across the display, but the barriers held. Instinct kicked in. Garrick rolled the ship hard to the right, avoiding a second volley. His hands moved across the console, fingers brushing glowing alien symbols, and suddenly the Revenant answered. Blue ice plasma bolts erupted from the warship's cannons, lancing through the void. The first shot missed, but the second struck home, tearing into one of the Krell ship's wings. The smaller vessel spun out of control before exploding into a brilliant fireball. Garrick blinked. He had just killed someone. There was no time to dwell on it. The remaining Krell ships retaliated, moving with deadly precision. One of them strafed across the Revenant's flank, its disruptor cannons carving deep gashes into the hull. Warning lights flared. Hull integrity compromised. Shields at 40%. "Next time I blow," he thought. "Not good," Garrick gritted out. He slammed a hand down on the console, hoping for something, anything. And the Revenant responded. With a surge of energy, the ship twisted, engines firing in a pattern that no human craft could have managed. It dove beneath one Krell ship, then fired its thrusters at full burn, slamming into another from below. The impact sent the smaller vessel careening off course, right into the path of its allies' weapons fire. The Krell ship erupted into flames. 2 down, 4 to go. Zartok's voice returned, now tinged with disbelief. "Impossible! That ship is dead. It should not be." Garrick grinned despite himself. "Guess you were wrong, buddy." One of the remaining Krell ships looped behind him, weapons locking on. Garrick's hands tightened on the controls, but before he could react, the Revenant acted first. Countermeasure deployed. A burst of blue energy rippled outward from the ship. The Krell vessel's weapons systems flickered, then went completely dark. It drifted helplessly for a moment, and Garrick seized the opportunity. A single well-placed plasma shot from the Revenant's main cannons tore through the enemy's core. Another explosion bloomed against the black. 3 left. They were adapting now. The Krell tightened their formation, moving more cautiously. They had underestimated him before, but now they recognized the Revenant for what it was. A predator. Garrick's breathing was shallow. His hands were shaking. His entire life had been spent cleaning up after other people, taking orders, staying out of sight. But here, in this moment, he was at the helm of something powerful, something ancient and deadly. And he was winning. Then the ship's voice cut through his thoughts. "High energy signature detected. Enemy flagship preparing superweapon discharge. Evade immediately." His heart dropped. The last 3 Krell ships were just a distraction. The real threat was behind them. The Krell flagship, a massive war barge, was positioning itself, charging a weapon that Garrett had no doubt could obliterate him in a single shot. He had seconds to react. "Ship, give me options." Evasive maneuvers are insufficient. Only available countermeasure, Revenant's primary weapon. Activation requires command authorization. Garrick didn't hesitate. "Authorize it. Fire whatever the hell we've got." A deep hum resonated through the ship, growing into a deafening roar. The lights across the bridge flared, the entire vessel vibrating as a pulse of energy gathered at its core. Garrick didn't know what was happening, but he could feel the power building, a force beyond anything he had ever imagined. The Krell flagship fired. A beam of crimson energy cut through space, screaming toward the Revenant. And then the warship unleashed its own fury. The energy lance fired, a single, blinding column of blue-white light. It met the Krell's attack head-on, tearing through it like paper. The enemy's beam shattered, and the Revenant's lance kept going, striking the war barge with pinpoint precision. For a second, nothing happened. Then, the Krell flagship split apart. A chain reaction ignited within the warship, its entire structure rupturing as raw energy consumed it from the inside out. The explosion was enormous, a brilliant, violent burst of fire and debris that sent shockwaves rippling through space. The remaining Krell ships hesitated, and then, without another word, they turned and fled. The Revenant powered down its primary weapon, the ship's hum fading back into silence. Garrick sat there, staring at the wreckage, breathing hard. He had done it. He had survived. But the reality of it all hit him at once. The Krell weren't just going to let this go. He had taken something from them, something important. They would come back. They would come for him. End of story. And yet, as he looked around the bridge of his new ship, he couldn't bring himself to regret it. For the first time in his life, Garrick Holt wasn't just some janitor on a rundown station. He was the captain of a warship, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. Garrick sat in the command chair of the Revenant, staring at the swirling mass of wreckage where the Krell war barge had once been. His fingers were still clenched around the edges of the control panel, knuckles white, his breath coming in short, uneven gasps. The ship was quiet now, save for the faint hum of the engines and the occasional flicker of a damaged console struggling to keep up. The battle was over. He had won. Somehow, he leaned back, exhaling sharply, trying to wrap his head around what had just happened. Less than an hour ago, he was a janitor, a nobody. Now he was sitting at the helm of a warship that had just obliterated a Krell fleet. If someone had told him this morning that he'd be flying an alien vessel and engaging in space combat, he would have laughed in their face. Yet here he was. "Status report?" he asked hesitantly, not entirely sure if the ship would even respond to him now that the fight was over. "Primary weapons at 38% capacity, shielding at 24%, hull integrity stable, critical damage to secondary propulsion systems, repairs required." "Right," Garrick muttered. "Repairs. Gonna have to figure out how to fix you, huh? Huh?" He could hear the tension in his own voice, the way his words shook just slightly. He wasn't a soldier, he wasn't a pilot, he had no business being here, and yet the Revenant had chosen him. Why? Before he could dwell on it, the ship's sensors flared to life, an alert flashing across the main screen. "Long-range communications detected, incoming transmission." Garrick's stomach twisted. More Krell? No, they had run with their tails between their legs, but whoever was trying to contact him had to have seen the battle. He hesitated before tapping the control panel, bringing up the transmission. The screen flickered and a new face appeared, human this time. A woman, dark-skinned, sharp-eyed, wearing a high-collared flight suit with a silver insignia on her shoulder, the Galactic Union. Garrick felt a lump form in his throat. He had never interacted with the Union before, not directly anyway. They were the closest thing the galaxy had to a governing body, but they weren't always trusted out in the outer systems. In the end, "This is Captain Elora Vale of the Union fleet ship Vindicator," the woman said, her expression unreadable. "Unidentified vessel, you have just engaged and destroyed a Krell war fleet. Identify yourself immediately." Garrick hesitated. What was he supposed to say? He couldn't exactly tell them the truth. "Oh yeah, I was a janitor until about an hour ago. But now I guess I'm flying this alien warship because it decided I should." That sounded ridiculous. He started, clearing his throat. "This is Captain Garrick Holt of the Revenant." "Huh? That sounded official, right? The Krell attacked first. I just defended myself." Vale's eyes narrowed slightly. "The Revenant. We have no record of that ship in Union databases. What is its origin?" Garrick considered lying. He really did. But there was no way he could bluff his way past an experienced Union captain. He rubbed the back of his neck, exhaling slowly. "I found it," he admitted. "Drifting. Derelict. I boarded it, and, well, it let me take control." There was a long silence. Vale didn't look convinced. "Captain Holton," she said slowly, "you are piloting what appears to be a highly advanced alien warship that is not of any known design, and you expect me to believe you simply stumbled upon it? Yes?" The Union captain sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" "I'd say saved my own ass, for starters." Vale gave him a look. "You just destroyed a Krell war fleet. That doesn't just go away. The Dominion doesn't take losses lightly. They'll send reinforcements, and they will not stop until they've either reclaimed that ship or turned it to scrap." Garrick felt a cold weight settle in his gut. He had known deep down that this wasn't over, that this wasn't some one-time skirmish, but hearing it out loud made it feel real in a way he wasn't prepared for. It was painful enough already. His friend's biography was already painful enough as it was. "What are my options?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Vale studied him for a long moment before speaking. "You could come with us," she said. "The Union has resources, engineers. We can analyze the Revenant, figure out what it is, where it came from, and why the Krell want it so badly. And in return, we can offer you protection." Garrick frowned. "And what's the catch?" "We'll need full access to the ship's systems," she said. "Its technology, its weapons. If it really is as powerful as it seems, the Union needs to understand it. We can't let something like this exist without oversight." Garrick's stomach twisted. He might not have known much about politics, but he knew enough to realize what she was saying. The Union wanted the Revenant under their control. They wanted to study it, maybe even replicate it. And Garrick? He would just be a pilot, a temporary operator of something far bigger than himself. Something inside him recoiled at the thought. "I need time to think," he said. "You don't have time," Vale said firmly. "The Krell will be back sooner rather than later." "I get that," Garrick said, "but I just went from being a janitor to flying a ship that can apparently vaporize warships in a single shot. You'll have to excuse me if I need a second to process that." Vale's expression softened just slightly. "I get it, but the longer you wait, the more danger you're in." The transmission cut out. The Union ship wasn't leaving, but Vale was giving him space. For now. Garrick leaned forward, pressing his forehead against his hands. What the hell was he supposed to do? The ship hummed beneath him, and for a moment he almost thought it was offering comfort. He looked up, exhaling sharply. "I don't suppose you've got an opinion on this, have?" he muttered. The ship's interface flickered. "Query unclear. Define opinion." Garrick chuckled weakly. "Never mind." But as he looked around the bridge, something clicked into place. The Revenant had saved him. It had chosen him. Maybe it didn't think the way he did, maybe it wasn't alive in the traditional sense, but it was more than just a machine. And if he handed it over to the Union, he had no doubt they'd dismantle it piece by piece. He couldn't let that happen. Garrick sat up straighter, glancing at the display. He had a Union ship watching him, and a Krell fleet probably already mobilizing to hunt him down. He needed a plan. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't going to let someone else decide his future for him. He tapped the controls, bringing up the star maps. There had to be somewhere he could go. Somewhere the Union and the Krell wouldn't expect. "All right, Revenant," he murmured. "Let's see what kind of trouble we can get into." The ship's engines flared to life, and Garrick Holt, former janitor, set a course for the unknown.